Now, newsman Dennis Dingley presents his unique look at current events in another of his wide-ranging daily video blogs.
Hi, and thanks again, everybody. Have you ever used what is called Skype? S-K-Y-P-E? It's a way to talk and cam with somebody. Of course, we've always had, not always, but in recent years, Microsoft Messenger and Yahoo and a lot of other protocols. I have friends around the country that I just sit and talk to. Sometimes I will sit for hours, kind of like having a cyber roommate. And all of it, except for the cost of your internet connection and the cam, is free. I was thinking about that today and realizing that were this decades ago, before all of this, when people made long-distance calls, they didn't make them very often, because now we think about long distance as being free. But decades ago, it wasn't. Long distance used to be a per-minute thing, and it cost a lot because in most cases, a series of operators all over the country had to work together just to get one call through. Today, subscribers are offered rate plans. When I was a kid, the only plan we had was to try to call in the evening, when rates were slightly less. Of course, it all began with Alexander Graham Bell, who eventually placed a 3-mile call in 1876. The world would never be the same. It's safe to say the telephone and its later generations. The telephone was an invention that changed the world. Now, before direct distance dialing, which only came into being between large cities in the early 1950s, making a long-distance call was a trek. Suppose you were in Palm Springs, California, and you wanted to call Key West, Florida. When you picked up the phone, it automatically brought an operator on the line. You would tell her, and all operators were female, you would tell her the number and the location of the city. Now, the operator in Palm Springs had to know geography. She knew that although Key West was east of her, she would likely have to go west to make the call. She probably had an open wire to Los Angeles among her choices. She would tell you to hold on, then push a key that prevented you from hearing anything. Then she would stick a patch cord into a hole marked Los Angeles. An LA operator would come on, and the Palm Springs operator would explain she was trying to reach Key West, Florida, and here was the number. Now, being in a larger city, the LA operator likely had a lot of choices to get east, and she might have been able to get to, say, Chicago. So, stick in another patch cord, and the Chicago operator came on. The LA operator would then explain the number and the location. Now, the Chicago operator, using her knowledge of geography, would see if she could route the call closer to the Florida Keys. If she were lucky, she would have a circuit to Miami, but maybe she could only get to Atlanta. Stick in a wire, Atlanta comes on, same explanation, you're on hold, you don't hear anything. Now, the Atlanta operator would likely have a free pair of wires to Miami. Same thing. Get me to Key West when the Miami operator comes on. Now, the Miami operator would likely, unless all the circuits to Key West were busy, she would be able to find a spare pair and would plug in her patch cord. But that wasn't the end of it. The operator in Key West would come on. She would be told what number she had to dial. Through all of this, the sound quality deteriorated and the levels went down. When the entire country could eventually dial any other number in the U.S. and do it without any operator, with computers finding the fastest route, long-distance dialing changed forever. But through all of this, the Bell system was the only phone company. It owned all the wires and every telephone you owned. In 1984, a federal judge deregulated the phone industry, and suddenly, long-distance carriers providing competition to Ma Bell were crawling out of the woodwork. Now long distance is included in most basic phone plans. But let's go back to the 50s for a moment, a 1954 episode of Dragnet. Joe Friday places a person-to-person call from L.A. to a little town in Utah. When he checks the charges for the police log, it was $1.40 a minute. That was more than a lot of people made in an hour at work. In many ways, long distance is one of the few things that's cheaper now than it was when I was a kid. I'm Dennis Daly with your daily news update.